Well, once again, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Paul Palan. I'm the product educator here at DMF Lighting. Today, we're going to be going over our wall washing applications and sort of best practices presentation. So we're going to cover a bit about just wall washing in general, why you want to use wall washing and some typical applications. We'll talk specifically about the best practices for our fixtures here at DMF, and then just cover more generally the fixtures and wall wash trims that we have currently offered in our products. So to start off with, why do we want to use wall washing in the first place? There's a number of benefits that you get from wall washing in architectural lighting. One, it can really help to sort of create a focal point. So whether it's highlighting artwork or mural walls, any sort of architectural features, textures, things like that, wall washing does a great job of illuminating large surfaces in a nice, even manner. So helps to really highlight things and bring out those sort of focal points in an architectural space. Can also really create an impression of brightness. So the human eye really takes in light, especially light that's right in front of us, and perceives that as to be much brighter than the equivalent amount of light that's going down onto the floor. So it can, the same amount of light, in other words, on a vertical surface can make, or can appear up to 5 times brighter than just sort of a standard downlight. So that sort of really efficient use of lighting onto a vertical surface can make a space feel a lot brighter and more open and inviting, really. It also can help provide orientation in some sort of the same vein. Those bright surfaces draw people sort of towards a place, or gives them direction and a sense of sort of a major architectural axis. So it's a great trick to be able to really, again, help define a space, increase contrast in some ways, and provide that orientation for the people in the space. Helps also to create dimension. So that use of wall washing, think of an example maybe where you have a lot of daylight coming in from one side of the room. You can balance that out really nicely on the other side of the room if you have a larger surface that's sort of more set back and not receiving so much natural daylight. So helps to balance things out, create dimension, and build out a space as well in those sorts of cases. Finally, it can be really useful for creating or increasing visual comfort. Particularly if like you have an open office space where people have desks and laptops where they're looking at relatively bright surfaces for long periods of the day. Lighting the vertical surfaces behind those monitors, behind desks, or rather sort of in front of the viewers, is going to help balance things out and create a more even amount of contrast, so they're not so strained and looking at a really bright source all day long. So all of these different reasons are reasons why we might want to employ wall washing. So we'll next look at some sort of typical applications, places where you might see these put to use. One is really to add indirect light into a space. So again, uniformly lit walls really add a layer of indirect lighting, especially can be used even if you have really sort of a blank wall, but even just a typical wall in like a conference room like this, where you have some artwork, adding a layer of light to that wall is going to create a nice soft indirect light that helps both with sort of reducing shadows and making the room more comfortable and easy to be in all around. So it's going to, again, define the space, provide some orientation, and give a nice even layer of indirect soft lighting to that room. Another application we see wall washing used in is if you want to sort of highlight or bring out texture within walls as well. Using a larger number of fixtures and spacing them tighter and closer to the wall can accentuate some of that, texture, especially if it's a really sort of heavy texture like a stone that we're looking at here. So it can create a little bit more depth and contrast and visual intrigue in a space that helps highlight some of those really beautiful natural materials. Another one would be for mural walls. So murals and sort of really intricate wallpaper, things like that, often want to be, very uniformly lit. So they're some top to bottom and can get the entire sense of the artwork. So wall washing is another great way to be able to do that, using, again, a nice even array of lighting that is going to create an expansive wash of light from top to bottom, left to right, helps to highlight those sorts of feature walls or architectural moments. Another one people don't think about a lot, though, or very often, can be for corridors. So corridors, especially if they're quite long or expansive, can often feel sort of dark. And if you're utilizing standard downlighting, might be concentrating a lot of light down to the floor. By, again, utilizing that trick to light those vertical surfaces, corridors might feel or can feel often much brighter, more open, and more sort of spacious. So it helps also if you're doing things like artwork or things that are put onto the walls in those corridors, and it just makes everything feel a bit more open and less sort of dark or dramatic in some ways. So can really help in those situations as well. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the best practices for wall washing. So we have some general guidelines, and I should note, we didn't mention this yet, but all of the content from this presentation is available in our wall washing application guide. So under our website, under resources and additional resources, you'll see it with our brochures. So the graphics and things from here are pulled directly from that guide if you ever want to go back and reference it. But when using DMF's wall washers, these guides were specifically given around our M series set of wall washers, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. But with those fixtures in mind, generally you want to place the fixture about a third of the distance of the height of the wall back from that wall. So if you, for easy math, have a 9-foot wall, a 3-foot setback distance from the wall is going to be just about right to give you a nice even wash of light from top to bottom. We'll talk again about the fixtures, but you also want to pair these with the widest possible optic that we have for that fixture family. So in the case of the M series, we have a general ambient 90-degree beam spread, as well as some of the higher lumen fixtures, a wide flood 60 degrees. So between those two, you have some options to get a really good, even, rather wide beam spread that's going to work the best for that fixture. But in terms of your setback distance of D, you want to get about a third of the way back from the height of your wall. The next spacing guideline, of course, is going to be your horizontal spacing or your on-center spacing. We've seen really great performance, especially with the wider beam angle of the general ambient, of spacing up to 2 times your setback distance. If you're looking for either a higher intensity or you have a really critical application, a really reflective surface, you might consider going down to 1.5 or even 1 times your setback spacing. So calculations and field tests are like highly encouraged in any of these scenarios. However, the M series wall washers have had great performance on a 2 times spacing ratio. So in our previous example of a 9-foot ceiling, we had 3 feet back from the wall and 6 foot on center spacing in this particular example. One thing to consider if you do have particularly tall ceilings, you might consider going a little bit closer to the wall there. So going about 1/5 of the distance of the height of your room. So again, like in a 20-foot ceiling, or maybe let's say a 15-foot ceiling for easier math, you can stick around that 3 to 4 foot setback distance to get still a good even wash of light and maintain some intensity at the top of your beam. Next, we'll just look at a few of those examples. So we have in this particular layout, an 8-foot tall ceiling and a 16-foot wide wall. We're doing a 2-foot setback and a 4-foot spacing, so a little bit closer than the 1/3 guideline, and then about that, just at that 2 times spacing ratio. So you get at the center of your beam a really pretty nice even intensity. That blends quite nicely between your fixtures. In a grazing application, if we have like maybe some more stone texture or things like that, this is an area where we're looking at a 1-foot setback and much tighter 1'6" spacing. You can see it sort of really brings out some of that texture more and highlights things in a little bit more of an even manner. We do have sort of a guideline for a more economical approach. So if you're going to really sort of set back and reduce the number of fixtures, or maybe your layout just never was designed around wall washing, but you have fixtures that are in this sort of approximate sort of layout, we have a 3-foot setback here, and again, that 2 times distance of 6-foot spacing. You can still see a relatively even performance across the board here and getting your wall wash complete. And then last but not least, that sort of higher ceiling application. So we have a 20-foot ceiling with a 16-foot wide wall. We're going with 4-foot setback and a 6-foot spacing. So keeping things a little bit tighter at a 1.5 spacing ratio here to make sure we still have good horizontal spread. It's about that 6-foot to 7-foot max distance in those horizontal spacings, but keeping things a little bit closer to the wall so that we have still good high sort of intensity at the sort of peak of the beam up there. I'll wrap things up now by just talking a bit about our different wall washing solutions here at DMF. So right now we have two different specification grade fixtures that have wall wash options within them. So those are going to be the M series and X series family of downlights. The downlights, as well as their complementing cylinders now, all have different wall wash options, which we'll go over, but they're available in round and square varieties, as well as the flanged and flangeless. They're all designed to work with our fixed downlight modules. So you pair that with a fixed downlight, and again, that widest possible option for the optic, and you get a really great performing wall wash. We have some standard finishes here in black, white, as well as a clear diffuse, which gives you sort of that specular finish on the inside and helps reduce glare a little bit. So something nice to consider for some of those wall wash applications. First, to talk about the M series. So the M series, again, is our 4-inch family of downlights and cylinders. So the 4-inch downlight, fixed downlight, will look just like this. And again, anything up to 2000 lumens has a general ambient option, which will give you that 90+ degree beam spread in a typical application. So you're going to want to pair that optic with any of these wall wash trims to get the best sort of horizontal spread and the best performance overall. The M series is split up into two parts of the family. So we have an IC rated part of the fixture family that will go up to 1500 lumens. We then also have an M series commercial family, which will go up to a full 3500 lumens. So both of those options, again, you use with our fixed downlights. This is an example of one of our M series commercial modules. So again, 3500 lumens, great for some of those taller ceiling applications that we were looking at, and going to give you a really great performance overall. Once again, if you go beyond our 2000 lumen fixture output, you're going to have the flood optic rather than that general ambient, but that's still, with those, especially with those taller ceiling applications, gives you some really great even performance. The trim part numbers are there, so again, available in the round and square, as well as our flanged and flangeless options, which will have the FL at the end of the part number. So all those options available for the M series downlights. The M series cylinders, again, these are all based around the modular design of our downlight families. So they're utilizing the same modules within these cylinders. We have options that go between 4, 8, and 12 inches in length. The 4 and 8-inch versions can accommodate up to 2000 lumens total, and the 12-inch versions can go up to 3000 lumens. So a wide range of output. Again, you can fit these cylinders into a number of applications, places where you don't have, a finished ceiling, or maybe you have an open ceiling. They're available throughout all of the fixture types. So we have pendants, surface mounts, and wall mounts. Wall mounts may not always be the most advantageous to use, although it is possible. Especially maybe if you have a particular application where it's on a beam or some other sort of unique application. Probably not going to get the best, traditional wall wash out of it, but it could be something that could be tested and employed for more of sort of an accent type application, or you want to highlight something directly in front of that cylinder. So something that is available, but probably less commonly used than our surface mounts or pendants. The pendants are available in a cord and stem. However, we generally recommend these stem mounts for just a little bit more rigidity. They won't really rotate as nearly as much as a pendant will, or maybe move in a strong breeze from the air conditioning or something like that. But the trims that you see there are exactly those M series wall wash trims. So they are assembled here at the factory. We have that standard black, white, bronze, and brushed aluminum finish. And the trim itself has a rotation mechanism built in, so you can very easily rotate it on site and get it set exactly in the orientation that you need. The next family of downlights that features wall washing here at DMF is going to be our X series small aperture family of downlights. So the X series downlight trims are just approximately 3 inches across at the ceiling plane. So we again have our microflange and flangeless options for this family. The microflange trims here are really nice, thin flange that is just about 1/4 of an inch in diameter, or rather width for that flange. So very slim, minimal looking trims that blend really nicely with the ceiling. Same finish options that we've seen before, and the X series will go up to 1500 lumens in output. Again, this family has a slightly different optical system. It utilizes a cross beam optic, so those will go up to that wide flood beam spread that you'll want to choose for use with any of our wall washing products in this family. So those are the X series wall washers. I do have one here sort of installed in a pseudo ceiling. That is the flangeless in black. So it's a very nice, clean, modern looking wall wash that gives you a great performance. Just a note about the X series wall washers, because of that approximately 60-degree beam spread, we found the best performance at about 2'6" to 3' setback from the wall, and much closer to a 1-to-1 spacing ratio. So about 3 foot back and 3 foot spacing, you'll have a really great even wall wash. And we're working on getting those guidelines updated in our application guide as well. So you'll have that available when we do. Finally, the X series cylinders is the last family that has a wall wash available as well. Similar in the output, or sorry, the mounting options that we have for our M series with that pendant surface and wall mount. I have an example here in one of our our surface mounted cylinders. So it has surface mount canopy that goes directly to our ceiling. Once again, these cylinders all utilize the same downlight modules right within the cylinder. So it's very easy to have a nice match if you have our recessed fixtures, and you don't have to worry about any sort of driver coordination, placement, or bulky canopies in your project. They all have a very slim mounting bracket, and then the driver and everything is all located directly within the cylinder. So similarly, 4 different finishes on the trims that match our standard cylinder finishes, and again, once again with the downlight up to 1500 lumens in output. So those are all the different wall washing options that we currently have here at DMF. If anybody has any sort of additional questions or things they would like to see, please do feel free to drop that in the Q&A. Otherwise, we'll hope to see you all again soon next week. We'll be sending out our monthly training email in the next couple of days. So be on the lookout for that for the upcoming trainings for May. Thank you all and have a great day.